All right, today's about picking a face side. And what you do is you mark on the face side for a couple of reasons. The first reason is so that when you're cutting it, you know exactly which pieces is face up and which one is face down, and you don't have to do a lot of thinking because you got you, to be safe at what you're doing. You have to take away the thinking time away from the routing time. And if what I mean by that is that when you're routing 80 pieces because you're making 40 boxes for your craft sale that you're doing, is that you just want to look at the piece and know that the X is the face side up. You don't want to have to decide which is the face side at the time that you're doing the routing. So let's watch Dad pick a face side. And the reason he's picking the face side is because he's picking the areas that are, crappy, and which ones are good and which ones are not. So let's watch the show, or the excerpt out of the show.
Something that's very simple. Don't get a complicated joint if it's not necessary to do it. And this particular joint that we're going to use in the box, that is to hold all the pieces together, is called a rabbet. And we're going to put a rabbet joint together here. Now, what we're going to do with it is we're going to take and put a rabbet joint all the way around, top and bottom. And we're going to put a rabbet only on the two ends of the sides. And the ends we're not going to do anything with right now. But the first thing, when you get all your pieces cut, the first thing you should always do is pick a face side. That is, pick some side that's the nicest and mark it, because that's the part that's going to show. So we'll put an X on that side. This is a little bit of a barky edge on it that'll rabbet out, so we'll put one on here. We got those two. The two ends we'll pick. We'll put an X on those, and that one. And the two sides, we'll put one on it, get a little contrast color there. If you notice in here, you might not be able to see that in it, but it's got a little bit of bad grain on it. We'll put that on the inside of the box and put side together. Let's just set those aside down here for a second.
All right, there you go. You got the pick in the face side. The other thing you noticed that when he was doing this was he was marking where it was going to be routed. So when you're beginning and you're learning how to do this, if you mark where you're going to route it when you're doing your thinking time, you'll have no trouble figuring out what it is. You'll have an X, or you have a line exposing where the cutter is going to be cutting the piece. And then just follow the lines that are on your blocks. And that's one tip for safety. I got a question for you there before we leave. What do you cut? The ones with 4 sides? The ones with 2 sides? Or does it matter? You don't care which one you cut first. The one with the least amount of cuts on it, or the one that has the 4 cuts on it? Let's take a look at this and let's say we're doing 10 boxes. So that's 40 cuts on the top, 40 cuts on the bottom, and 20 on the 2 sides. If you go ahead and cut the 40 cuts or the 4 cuts first, what do you do on the first ones that just need the 2 cuts? You're used to cutting 4 cuts, right? So you're going to cut 4 cuts. So the rule of thumb is to cut all the parts that have the least amount of cuts on them first. Because what will happen is when you're done cutting all of the 40 pieces, you'll come up to the one that needs the 4 cuts on it, and you'll cut them in 2 slots and not ruin the piece because you just didn't cut the other 2 sides. If you do the 4 cuts first, what you do with the first ones that just need 2 cuts is you put 4 cuts on it. And now you're making new pieces. Just a tip. Anyways, that's how we separate things. We basically go through the process and do the least amount of cuts first, and then do the one that has the most cuts. That keeps you out of trouble. And always put your thinking time first with the router unplugged, and your routing time separate. So that's it for today. Let's move on.